You already know one word from this story, marathon. And it's named for the day a single, outnumbered city shattered a piece of the largest empire the world had ever seen. That empire ruled, by some estimates, nearly 1 in 2 human beings alive on Earth. So how does a giant like that get flipped by a few thousand farmers? Stick around, because that same flip happens again and again, right up to a king watching his fleet die from a chair on a beach. Here's what I can't get past. Almost everything we picture when we hear the word Persia was written by the Greeks who beat it. So history's most tolerant empire got remembered as the villain. But to see how it all flipped, you have to go back to the start. Persia did not rise by being the strongest. It rose by flipping stronger empires, one after another. That is the pattern, all the way to the end. The flipper always becomes the flipped. Let's rewind 200 years. Start with a nobody. A minor king in a rugged place called Anshan, tucked in the hills of what is now Iran. His name is Cyrus. His little kingdom answers to a bigger one, the Medes. Cyrus is a vassal, a servant king who bows to an overlord named Astyages. Around 553 BC, Cyrus stops bowing. He rebels. Astyages does what any furious overlord would do. He raises his army and marches out to crush the upstart. And here's where it gets strange. The Median army does not fight for their own king. They mutiny. They seize Astyages, put him in chains, and hand him over to Cyrus. The underdog wins his war without really winning a battle. His enemy's own soldiers handed him a throne. Cyrus could have executed the captured king. He does not. He spares him. He folds the Medes into his new Persian state instead of burning it down. That mercy becomes his signature. Now watch the underdog turn into the giant. He marches west to Lydia, and its king Xerxes, a man so rich we still say rich as Croesus. Cyrus storms his capital after a siege of only roughly 2 weeks. The wealthiest king in the world, gone. Then the big one, Babylon, the greatest city on earth. In 539 BC, Cyrus defeats its army and walks into Babylon, by many accounts almost without a fight. Stop and count the score. In under 20 years, a vassal nobody has built the largest empire the world has ever seen, from the Aegean coast to the deserts of Central Asia. But it gets stranger, because of what this conqueror does next. When Cyrus takes Babylon, he does something rare for a conqueror. He lets captured peoples go home. He returns the gods and temple statues that Babylon's kings had carried off. That policy of return is carved onto a baked clay barrel we call the Cyrus cylinder, dug up in Babylon in 1879, now sitting in the British Museum. And you will hear that cylinder called the world's first charter of human rights. It isn't. That's a myth. The cylinder names peoples east of the Tigris, not some grand universal freedom. And that famous translation floating around online, the one stuffed with modern human rights language, historians say that version is basically a fabrication. But here is what is real. Among the people Cyrus let go home were the Judean exiles, held in Babylon for decades. He let them return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. The Hebrew Bible never forgot it. Isaiah even calls Cyrus God's anointed, the only non-Jew ever given that title. His tolerance was genuine. He let conquered peoples keep their gods, their laws, their customs. That is why an empire of so many nations held together. Not the myth, the mercy. Cyrus died around 530 BC, fighting nomads on the wild northeastern frontier. By Herodotus' account, he fell to a warrior queen named Tomyris. They buried the man who ruled the world in a plain stone tomb at Pasargadae. It still stands today. Small, simple, alone on an empty plain, Cyrus built the empire. Now someone had to run it. His son Cambyses added Egypt. Then, in 522 BC, after a bloody scramble for the crown, a new king seized power, Darius. If Cyrus was the sword, Darius was the blueprint. He carved the whole empire into about 20 provinces called satrapies, each one run by a governor, a satrap. But Darius did not trust his satraps, so he planted watchers in every province, traveling inspectors the Persians called the eyes and ears of the king. Then he built a road, the royal road. Roughly 2,700 kilometers of it, from Susa to Sardis, with over 100 stations, each stocked with fresh horses. A message that took 3 months on foot could now cross the empire in about a week. Royal couriers rode in relay day and night through any weather. Herodotus wrote about those riders, and his words outlived his empire. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night. Sound familiar? It is stamped on post offices today. It was written about Persian messengers 2,500 years ago. Darius wanted money that worked everywhere too. So he minted the gold daric, a thick coin of nearly pure gold, one of the first reliable imperial currencies in history. And he built a palace to show it all off. Persepolis. Its grand staircase is carved with long lines of people from every corner of the empire, each bringing tribute to the king, because the reach was staggering now. Persian records described an empire that ran, in their words, from India to Ethiopia, from the edge of India across to Egypt and Libya, all the way to the coast of Greece. Here is a number to sit with. By some estimates, around 480 BC, as much as roughly 44% of every human being alive on Earth lived under Persian rule, nearly 1 in 2 people on the planet. By some accounts, no empire before or since has ever held a bigger share of humanity. This was the superpower, unbeatable. Its elite guard were called the Immortals. By some accounts, the unit was kept at exactly 10,000 men. Every soldier who fell was instantly replaced, so the ranks never seemed to shrink. To their enemies, they looked like men who could not die. So who on earth could flip a machine like this? A few thousand farmers on the far side of the sea. It starts small. Some Greek cities on the empire's western edge revolt, and Athens sends help. Darius is insulted. In 490 BC, he ships an army across the Aegean to punish one single city, Athens. They land on a plain called Marathon. The Athenians are badly outnumbered. They charge anyway. And they do not just win, they shatter the Persians. By Herodotus' count, 6,400 Persians died on that beach, against just 192 Athenians. A single city had rooted a piece of the largest empire on earth. A runner supposedly carried the news home to Athens and gave us the word marathon. Darius wanted revenge. He died before he could take it, so his son inherited the grudge. Xerxes. In 480 BC, Xerxes came back, not to punish one city, but to swallow Greece whole. He came with an army so vast that Herodotus claimed it numbered in the millions. Modern historians think that figure is wildly exaggerated, but it was still one of the largest forces the ancient world ever gathered. The Greeks tried to hold him at a narrow mountain pass, Thermopylae. And here is the part nobody tells you. You have heard it was 300 Spartans against the whole Persian army. That is the movie version. The truth is bigger. About 7,000 Greeks held that pass together for days. Not 300, 7,000. The 300 come only at the very end. A local trader showed the Persians a hidden mountain path and guided them around behind the Greeks. Most of the army retreated to fight another day. And to cover them, about 300 Spartans plus roughly 700 Thespians, nobody ever names, stayed behind to die. And they did. Thermopylae was a Persian victory, but it cost them time. And it turned the Greeks into legends. Then came the sea. Which brings us right back to that throne on the beach. Xerxes' fleet chased the Greek ships into the tight strait of Salamis. The Athenian commander, Themistocles, had lured them in on purpose. In open water, Persia's huge numbers were a weapon. Crammed into a narrow channel, those same numbers became a trap. Ships crashed into ships, no room to turn. Xerxes watched from his throne on the shore, waiting for a slaughter. He got one, his own. By ancient accounts, Persia lost on the order of 200 to 300 ships that day. The Greeks lost around 40. The king who came to devour Greece pulled his army out and went home. The next year, in 479 BC, the Greeks destroyed the last Persian force left behind at Plataea. The invasion of mainland Greece was over. And here is where you would expect the story to end. The superpower humbled. The empire falls. Except it didn't. Losing Greece barely scratched Persia. Greece was a distant fringe, an edge of the map. The empire lived on for roughly another 150 years. Cyrus's machine was that strong, but it rotted from the inside. Satraps rebelled against the throne. Kings were poisoned and stabbed by their own families. The court became a nest of intrigue and murder. The sword that conquered the world slowly turned on itself. And then a new underdog appeared, from the north. From a rough kingdom the Persians barely respected. Macedon. His name was Alexander. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed into Asia with a small, ferocious army. At a river called the Granicus, he smashed the first Persian force sent to stop him. Asia Minor cracked open. The next year, at Issus, he met the great king himself, Darius III. And Darius did something that would stain his name forever. When the battle turned against him, he ran. He fled his own chariot and abandoned his mother, his wife, and his children in the camp. Alexander captured all of them. Then, on the 1st of October, 331 BC, the two kings faced each other one last time. Gaugamela. Darius had the far bigger army. Alexander had roughly 40,000 men. It did not matter. Alexander drove a cavalry charge straight at the Persian center, aimed at the great king himself. And once again, Darius ran. The heart of the empire was gone. Alexander took Babylon. He took Susa. And he took Persepolis, Darius the Great's shining palace of 100 nations. And then Persepolis burned. Why is still argued to this day. Some ancient writers say it was a drunken revel, a fire started on a dare by a courtesan named Thais. Others say it was called revenge, payback for the day Xerxes had burned Athens. Either way, the greatest palace of the ancient world went up in flames. Darius III never saw the true end. Fleeing east, beaten and desperate, he was stabbed to death. Not by Alexander, but by one of his own satraps, a man named Bessus, who wanted the crown for himself. That was it. After roughly 220 years, the Achaemenid dynasty was over. Its last king murdered by his own governor, dying in the dirt by the roadside. The flipper had become the flipped. But an empire that big does not simply vanish. It leaves a blueprint. Alexander did not tear Persia's system down. He kept it. The satrapies, the roads, the couriers, the coins, the whole idea of ruling many peoples under one crown. His successors borrowed it. And in time, so did Rome. And it is still around you. The marathon race is named for a battle against Persia. The postal line about snow and rain and gloom of night was written about Persian riders. Provincial governors, kept honest by inspectors, that idea is Persian too. It is sitting quietly in the shape of the world you live in right now. And Cyrus, the underdog who started it all, is remembered as something rarer than a conqueror, as a liberator, the king who let the captives go home, an empire that ruled nearly half of humanity, begun by a vassal whose own enemy handed him a throne, ended by a king who watched his navy die from a chair on the beach. The real lesson of Persia is not how high it rose. It is that the ones who flip giants become giants, and giants, in the end, always get flipped. And here is the part I can't shake. We only know this empire through the people who beat it. The most tolerant power of the ancient world came down to us as the villain in someone else's story. History does not belong to the strongest. It belongs to whoever survives to tell it. And Persia lost the story long before it lost the war. Next time, we follow the man who finished the job. The Macedonian outsider who chased Darius across the world, torched Persepolis, and swallowed the largest empire on earth before he even turned 30. Alexander the Great, the man who would finish what Greece started and take Persia whole. Subscribe, and I will see you there.